or via email after the event. So the next speaker is Professor Roberto Verdone, and his talk will be the IoT in the era of 5G, Perspectives from Italy. Roberto Verdone has been full professor of telecommunications at the University of Bologna, Italy, since 2001. He got his master and PhD degrees from the same university in 1991 and 1995, respectively. In 2001, he founded a research group named Radio Networks. In 15 years, he has participated to or coordinated about 15 collaborative research projects funded by the European Commission in the fields of IoT and mobile networks, which are his main research interests. Since February 2020, he is the director of YLab, the National Laboratory of Wireless Commission of Italy, and since October 2020 he is co-director of an innovative center on 6G communication. So this is going to be a pre-recorded presentation, and then I will play the video, and you may start using the Q&A function while the video is playing to interact with Professor Verdone, who will be able to address your question at the end of the video.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Roberto Verdone. I'm from the University of Bologna in Italy, and I'm director of YLab, the National Laboratory of Wireless Communication, which was recently established in Italy. I will give you my speech on the perspectives from Italy regarding IoT in the coming years. First of all, a few words about the Wireless Communication Laboratory, YLab. YLab is located in Bologna, mostly in Bologna, which is the capital of Emilia-Romagna region, a region well known for being the motor valley and the packaging valley of Italy. Lamborghini, Maserati, Ferrari, Ducati, they're all close to Bologna, and there's a lot of companies in the field of mechatronics. We are also the data valley of Europe, which means that we have a lot of industry relations, contracts with companies, and so my speech might be a little bit biased by the contracts we have and the visions we have regarding the future application of IoT in the motor valley and the packaging valley of Italy. What we are currently facing today is the analysis, the investigation of the path from 5G to 6G. So what is going to happen in the next 10 years in terms of mobile radio communications, and in particular, the IoT. And so this is the outline of my presentation, actually. It will go through this path from 5G to 6G. Actually, it will start a little bit earlier by analyzing in step one, the pre-5G era, which means what happened in Italy in the past few years. Then I will move to step 2 and 3, which are related to the next decade and what is going to happen with 5G phase 1 and 5G phases 2 and 3. And then finally, I will give you a glimpse of what we believe will be the society needs and the technology trends that will drive to 6G, the era that will start in 2030. And then I will conclude my presentation providing an answer to the question, is the IoT a value for our society? Of course, you might say, yes, we don't need to wait for your conclusions. I totally agree. The IoT is a value for our society. But if this is the case, why do we have so many people in the streets saying they don't want 5G, please stop 5G? There's a problem here. And we had a lot of these problems in Italy nowadays. So I will try to discuss this when I will be closer to my conclusions. So step one, pre-5G, Italy perspective. Currently in Italy, there's a lot of M2M traffic. There are tens of millions of machines, industry machines, which are connected to the internet. And this happens thanks to GPRS, the 2G technology managed by the telcos. And actually nowadays, our telcos are still providing 2G coverage, mostly because of machine-to-machine traffic. Since several years, in many parts of Europe, LoRaWAN is an available technology. And this is true also in many parts of the world outside Europe. In particular, in Europe, LoRaWAN is used in the ISM band at 868 megahertz, whereas in the US, you use it at 913 megahertz. Well, actually, though in countries like UK, France, and Germany, LoRaWAN is in use, and it's a true success from the market viewpoint as an IoT enabler since 3 to 4 years. In Italy, it became commercially available only 1 month ago. The reason is a long story, and I will tell you not the long story, but to make it short, for reasons related to the fact that we are a very nice country, but sometimes from the viewpoint of innovation, we are not exactly the most exciting country. Our ministry gave the authorization to use for LoRaWAN the 868 ISM band only 1 month ago after a long fight. So currently there are LoRaWAN networks deployed. There's still no market because the market is going to grow since the next few months. In the meanwhile, our network operators like Telecom Italia, Vodafone have deployed with almost 100% coverage 4G narrowband IoT technologies. They are totally unused at the moment. The reason stands in a number of facts. To simplify them, I would say, because there's still a gap of good business models for customers to use the narrowband IoT network offered by our operators. So this is the current situation in terms of what happened in the past few years. So let's move now to step number 2, 5G, phase 1. So basically the few years in front of us. As it is well known, 5G is actually 3 networks in one, eMBB, MMTC, and URLLC. Well, actually, the current state of deployment by our operators is in Italy. Several cities are covered with the release 15 of 5G, which means a release which is for eMBB traffic only. What is going to happen in the next few years? We know that the IoT will grow fast in the coming years. There's a lot of expectation about this, mostly in the field of smart cities and smart agriculture. In these 2 domains, there's a lot of applications which are currently going to be deployed, going to be used, but most of them do require a few bytes to be transmitted every hour, every 4 hours, whatever, gas meters, trash bin management, and so on and so forth. In all these cases, you don't need 5G. You don't even need narrowband IoT. You can use LoRaWAN. And this is what everyone expects to happen in Italy, as it happened already in the past few years in the rest of Europe, where LoRaWAN was available since several years. Semtech recently mentioned that they have already delivered 160 million chipsets, LoRa chipsets in the world. So LoRaWAN is already a success. It's going to be a success as well in Italy in the coming years, which means that for most of the applications in these 2 domains, there's no need for narrowband IoT and 5G. So what is narrowband IoT for? Narrowband IoT, I think, will become the enabler in the next few years for smart industry applications, in particular for process monitoring applications. The 5G ICIA, which is the association of all companies in the field of automation, has delivered 1 year ago an interesting white paper describing the requirements for industry applications. One of the classes of applications they have in mind is the process monitoring class, which, according to the requirements it sets, can be served by narrowband IoT technologies. So there's no need for 5G for these application domains as well, for these IoT applications. So what about 5G? I think that 5G will initially address eMBB services for few years, and only when phase 2 and phase 3 and a significant coverage will be available, then which means in some years from now, until the end of this decade, then 5G will actually be able to serve some IoT applications. Which ones? I believe basically there are two kinds of applications where 5G might be used, or at least many say it will be used. Control in smart industry applications and vehicular communications. Let me start saying a few words about industry control. If you read the white papers from the 5G ACIA, as I said, they mentioned that there's a number of, actually 4 application categories for the IoT industry control. 3 of them do require technologies which are not available nowadays, and we have to wait at least for 5G URLLC. But actually, look at this diagram, which shows somehow some of the contents of the white papers delivered by the 5G ACIA. There are several categories of the industry applications that do require a latency which is below 2 milliseconds, the latency that will be available with 5G, which means that a lot of industry control applications, so a lot of industrial IoT applications will not be served by the 5G network. What about vehicular communications? As you know, release 16 of 5G includes the so-called CV2X side-link technology, which is a technology to allow vehicles, cars, to talk to other cars. But is it sufficiently reliable for safety applications? Look at the picture here on the right. Think of corner effects. Do you think that we will get a 99.9999% reliability in such condition? I don't think so, actually. And so 5G will be a technology, a key technology for the 10 years to come in the field of automotive applications, but not for safety applications. In Bologna, we are currently at YLab, we do have a project, an important project with important car manufacturers, and we are working in the direction of green cars. The future powertrains of commercial cars will be a sort of hybrid and fuel-based machines that will need a lot of information for the optimization of the powertrain. And this information should come from traffic lights, from maps, from cloud services, from other vehicles. A lot of information that should come to every individual car running in a city. And basically this means that 5G will play a great role here, though not for safety applications. Now, step number 4. What's going to happen in the 2030 society, the society that will be served by 6G? Well, as we said, 5G is a triangle of different types of services. And it is well known that 6G will make the requirements of these 3 different dimensions even more stringent. What is important to say is that, however, 6G will introduce further dimensions, in particular, some related to positioning accuracy and some others related to device lifetime and energy consumption. So 6G is actually going to be more a sort of prism than a triangle, as it was 5G. However, due to the fact that these requirements will be much more stringent, 6G will be the final enabler for all industry control applications, because it is expected that the latency will be in the order of 0.2 milliseconds. And an enabler of V2X communications. For instance, we are currently investigating through a number of projects what we call 3D networks. Networks where a lot of nodes will fly above our heads. UAVs flying around in the city and serving as base stations of mobile radio networks, the ground users, In this case, of course, the reliability of V2X communication through the UAVs, through the drones, will be significantly larger than what you can achieve through terrestrial-based mobile radio networks. This slide shows our vision of 6G. 5G is going to be about vehicles, about industrial applications, a lot of things which don't have a direct impact on humans. Remember, when we invented mobile radio networks, actually this was in Europe, 2G was for the humans, 3G was for the humans, and 4G is still for the humans. Currently, we are only talking about industry, machines, things, objects. We are not talking anymore about humans. And this is the main reason why I believe most people are saying we don't want 5G. With 6G, we have to put the man in the center, again, with all his needs. On the other hand, of course, we also have to serve the progress of our societies and so machines. So that's where beyond 5G networks should be deployed, in the center between the needs of the man and the needs of machines. So let me conclude. The IoT, is it a value for our society? Of course it is, as we said, but actually I believe that it will be perceived as a value the day when we will stop talking about 5G is for the industry, 5G is for autonomous cars, things that most of the people are still worried about because it's the future and they're worried about the future. We should talk about their senses, their feelings, their emotions. So the IoT will definitely become a value for our society the day when it will be perceived directly by citizens. So thank you very much. I'm very welcome to your questions now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Professor Verdone. You might want to activate your camera and microphone. Professor Verdone. Are you there? Let's give a couple of minutes because I see you there, but I cannot hear you.
Hello, Filippo, can you hear me?
Yes, nice and clear.
I had to switch it on and off several times, I'm sorry.
No problem, it happens. So, I have a question. So first of all, I encourage attendees to ask questions as I showed before using the Q&A button. So I have a couple of questions. The first one is that, so you show that there are a lot of problems in Italy with the rage against 5G and this not acceptance of this technology in US and worldwide is the same thing. So this is a common problem. What do you think we can do as educators and people from academia to help the public accept this new technology? So whenever there is a change, it's always difficult to accept it. And what's your vision? Like how can we help overcome this challenge?
Thank you, Filippo, for this very complex question. Actually, I believe that changes are always difficult to people from the street, people without a strong background in technology or a strong desire to use technology. On the other hand, I'm old enough to remember that the same story happened with 2G, then with 3G, then with 4G. Every time people being afraid of the new generation of mobile radio networks. However, I think that this time it is worse for reasons that I was somehow mentioning quickly in my in my speech, the 5G is currently presented to the general public as a new technique for machines, for autonomous cars. If you ask people from the street, they realize that the keywords are more speed, industry. They don't feel it is something that will really improve their life, their daily life. And so this is what I think we should do in terms of communication towards the general public. Emphasize, for instance, Chairman Pai was mentioning VR, AR will unfortunately came later. Of course, the day when we will clarify that VR, AR will improve the way you will visit archaeological sites and so on in a sort of mixed virtual and physical fashion, people will be, this is just an example, of course, will be more happy to accept these technology changes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We can do our part, and it's gonna be very important to help people accept it.
Yep.
We have a question from the attendee, from Chen Cheng. What do you mean by putting the people in the center of 6G? Is it kind of interaction with people?
What I mean is that think of the paradigm of the Internet of Senses, something that several people are currently working on. Currently, and after 30 years of mobile radio networks, we are still limiting our communication, interhuman communication, to 2 senses, but we have 6. The usual 5 plus the empathy. Empathy is a physical instance. Empathy is about exchanging of brain waves among people, okay, electromagnetic waves at frequencies up to 50, 60 hertz, whatever. So through effective communication through mobile radio networks should happen involving all the 6 senses, but we are still very far from that. So the Internet of Senses is an example of what we should be working on in order to provide progresses which will be felt by anyone as something which is really useful to the whole community directly, to humans. This is what I mean by putting the man in the center.
Thank you very much, Roberto. There are a couple of questions, but we do not have time. We will forward these questions to you by email, and if you have time, we would appreciate if you can address those questions.
Of course I will.